Welcome to Tech Transformation with CGT and RIS News, where we explore the innovative tech strategies and trends in retail and consumer goods. I'm Lisa Johnston, Senior Editor at CGT. In this episode, I'm talking with Mike Proulx, VP and Research Director at Forrester Research. We're going to talk about what might be one of the most hyped words in retail and CPG, and that's the Metaverse. Mike and his team have just released their State of the Metaverse Report, and so he's going to walk us through some of the myths and realities when it comes to the Metaverse, including why we need to stop calling everything the Metaverse. So Mike, thanks so much for talking with me today. Really excited to have you here. Can you start us out? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Forrester.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I lead our CMO research team, where our research is specifically for B2C marketing executives. And prior to Forrester, I spent 12 years at Hill Holliday, which is an advertising agency where I was the chief digital officer. So I have close to 25 years now experience in the marketing space, especially with a digital first focus.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the State of the Metaverse Report. This is the first year I think your team has released this report. Beyond being incredibly topical, what prompted your team to do this report?
This is hot off the presses. We just published the report last week, but we had been releasing data about the metaverse really over the course of last year. We did several blog posts using consumer data on whether or not consumers were ready for the metaverse. We did some work on NFTs. We covered Meta's name change and consumer sentiment around that. But what this report represents is really Forrester's official point of view on the state of the metaverse. And what's unique about it is I partnered with 4 other analysts from across the Forrester ecosystem so that we were tackling this topic from different vantage points, everything from emerging tech to UX design to enterprise use cases. And then, of course, my coverage, which is B2C marketing.
Great. And I know we're going to get into some of those use cases later when we talk about that this isn't just about gaming. But one of the biggest features, or one of the biggest takeaways from the report, is that everyone needs to essentially stop calling everything the metaverse. I know I've admittedly been guilty of this. I'm thinking back to some of the stories I started writing when I first started writing about the metaverse, and we talked about them testing the waters. Why are we having such a definition problem with this?
Well, part of the issue is it's the shiny object syndrome that is filled with FOMO right now. But the reality is that immersive experiences, which the media and people within the industry are calling the quote unquote metaverse, they've existed for decades. We can go all the way back, and probably even before the days of Second Life back in the 2000s. And the reality is that the promise of the metaverse, the vision for it, is that it is a interconnected and interoperable set of virtual worlds and virtual spaces where I can take my stuff and my identity and my presence and have that persist from world to world. That does not exist at scale yet today, which is why Forrester's point of view is that the metaverse doesn't exist. What exists are what we call metaverse precursors, which are standalone immersive platforms, be them augmented reality or virtual reality. We believe that the metaverse will develop and evolve in stages over the next decade.
You're leading into my next question. The report features a really cool myths and realities section. So I want to go over just a handful of them here. The first myth is that there will be multiple metaverses. And you're saying that's not true. And is this going to be kind of like when you could tell how old someone was because they called it the internets, like if you were hearing the metaverses?
It's very true. I like to call, when people say metaverses, I like to call the plural metaversi, and I'm trying to make that stick. But Forrester believes that the metaverse is a singular phenomenon, just like the World Wide Web. So we should probably take a step back and talk about Forrester's definition of the metaverse, which is the 3D experience layer of the internet. So similar to the web, which is two-dimensional, the metaverse will layer atop the internet, but it's really about 3D immersive environments. It doesn't mean that you can't experience the metaverse in 2D, but simply that it is 3D rendered. So because it is akin to the web, and the web is also a singular phenomenon, so is the metaverse.
And it's 3D experiences, but it's not just a repackaging of VR. That was the next myth, that the metaverse is not just more virtual reality.
It is so easy for people to jump to virtual reality when they think of the metaverse, likely because of prompts and stimulus like Ready Player One and the Oasis that was featured in that book and movie. And while virtual reality will be an important part of the metaverse, if we think through the fact that VR is just one entry point, other entry points are things like augmented reality, really any extended reality experience. We also believe that the metaverse is bidirectional, that over time, while you will be able to enter the metaverse, enter the immersive spaces, so will the metaverse be able to enter your physical spaces through things like holographic projections. So virtual reality is just one mere entry point. And I should point out as well that for those that say, hey, the metaverse is going to fail because who's going to want to wear a VR headset for hours at a time? Well, one, it's not just VR, but two, and more importantly, technology is going to continue to advance and evolve so that we're not going to be in a state in time where we're going to have clunky headsets. They will become much more accessible and much less intrusive to our faces.
That's interesting. You bring up the clunky headsets. I mean, those used to be extremely expensive, and now, you can buy them almost in your local drugstore. So in terms of hardware, you're picturing more like Google Glass type, where it's just a little bit more natural to wear?
Perhaps, it's hard to say at this point. There's rumors of Apple coming out with a next generation headset, really their first VR headset on the marketplace. But one of the dangers that exists is that we're using, our current worldview and trying to project the future. But the reality is that as technology evolves, and it's happening very, very fast, there are going to be new devices and new use cases for that matter that we're not even able to conceive at this stage of the game.
I want to talk a little bit about Web3. I know this one's a bit contentious, but one of the myths was that the metaverse is the same as Web3. This is not true, Forrester is saying. I think it would be helpful if you could also, as you did with the metaverse, define really what Web3 is.
Sure. Yeah. So we put out 2 reports last week as well about Web3, and the general industry definition of Web3 is a decentralized and fair internet, where users control their data and their identity. And it is very much related to blockchain and cryptocurrency and the like. And while Forrester believes that, Web3 as it develops, because it's still really in concept right now, and it is much more a vision and sort of idealized, the metaverse might and likely will incorporate aspects of Web3. But Forrester's point of view is that the metaverse, as we're defining it, it's simply not dependent on quote unquote Web3, that you can have the 3D experience layer of the internet that's interoperable without the concepts of Web3.
And this isn't just gaming, right? I mean, gaming seems to be one of the biggest use cases propelling the metaverse forward, but the implications are much more vast.
It is. Yeah. So gaming is the obvious on-ramp to the metaverse because of the fact that gaming environments are 3D experiences. And so, those who are comfortable in gaming environments are going to be comfortable in other environments that comprise the metaverse because they're very similar in nature. We made the call in our Forrester report that the first cohort of onboarders to the eventual metaverse will be gamers, followed by those who are active in social media. So as the metaverse evolves, there are plenty of other use cases for it. It also depends as society starts to, or not, value digital goods, virtual goods, that is where commerce in the metaverse begins to take off in more of a mass way. But then you can think about other industries for the metaverse, education, being able to immerse yourself in environments and see new perspectives on things, travel, being able to travel to destinations, without having to physically be there. So, as I mentioned earlier, there are new customer experiences that we're just not even able to conceive yet because so much of this is still theoretical and the technology isn't mature enough to even be able to give us these use cases.
Now, I noticed you just had a caveat about whether or not we will value digital goods. Do you think there's still some doubt surrounding that?
We don't know yet, right? So we see early examples, especially if we start to get into a discussion around NFTs. The concept of value is one where every individual, has to kind of determine what's valuable to them. That limited edition Steph Curry sneaker NFT from Under Armour, how valuable is it? How does the marketplace value that? And so, if our digital and virtual lives become an important aspect to our everyday lives, then one could purport that virtual goods, whether they be items for our avatar, gear, clothing, decorations for our virtual home, even so far as to go down the path of potential real estate in the quote unquote metaverse, those things could start to become more valuable to more people, but the jury's out on that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about commerce. Our audience are the retailers and the brands. When it comes to selling DTC and it comes to commerce in the metaverse, how can retailers prepare and, what do they need to know to protect themselves?
It is still very early days right now when we think about commerce, and this kind of brings in the NFT discussion around that. What we're seeing as far as early experiments are things around virtual goods. So brands that are offering gear, clothing for avatars, or other aspects where you can get some type of power-ups or abilities with your avatar, again, and these standalone metaverse precursors. That's what brands have available to them right now. If we were to project out the shopping experience into the future, as the metaverse becomes actualized, one could imagine a much more personalized and truly seamless type of shopping experience that, again, we're in danger of taking how we shop today and applying those concepts into the metaverse. But you can bet that the way we do shopping in the physical world, or even just, regular e-commerce, is going to be different in the metaverse. But transaction and sort of an economy will be important to the eventual metaverse.